Okay, the next step in learning caged is kind of understanding the interval pattern of these chords. I think I've talked about this before. A chord is built up, at least these chords, which we call triads. We call them triads because they're composed of 3 notes. Some of the notes repeat. Why we have a 5-note chord here, right? We're playing 5 strings, but that C is repeated and the E is repeated. So it's just a C, an E, and a G, and then another C and another E. So it's really just a 3-note chord. And the way that we make those chords is with a scale. Hopefully you've done my scale videos. So if I took a C scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. The way we build the way we build the chord is we take the first note C, D, the third note E, and the 5th note G of the scale, and we call that the root, which is the first note, the third, which is the 3rd note, and the 5th, which is the 5th note, C, E, and G. So what we want to know with these caged chords is what pattern are we playing these root, 3rd, and 5th with. Okay, in memorizing the pattern of root, 3rd, 5th, root, whatever, we're going to do these out of order. We're going to start with the G chord. We're not going to go through it C, A, G, D. I'm going to start with the G chord, and you'll see why in a second. So a G chord, you're playing the root, the 3rd, the 5th. Let's lift up our 3rd finger here, because you know you can play a G chord like this, or you can play the B string open. So we're playing root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. Once you put down that ring finger on the 3rd fret, 2nd string, then root on the top. So this one's kind of easy. It's root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Okay? Just memorize that pattern. Root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. And just kind of be aware that the 3rd is here, it's here. The root is here, it's here, it's here. The 5th is here and here. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. C chord. It follows the same exact pattern. Root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. You don't have another string, so we're not going to play that root a 3rd time, but root, 3rd, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. And you notice the G and the C chord, they follow the same pattern. If you think about it, they really are the same chord, just moved over a size string. Because if we took this G chord, we move our pinky there. So if we took our G chord, we moved over 1 fret, or 1 string, sorry, and we compensated for the G and the B string by adding a fret to the B string. And if you watch my videos, you know what that's about. We have a C chord. It's the same sequence. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the E chord. Okay. This one follows a different pattern. It's root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. So it's root and 5th are the bottom 2 strings. Then it's root, 3rd, 5th, root. Okay, it seems intimidating at first to memorize all these root, 3rd, root, whatever. It's much easier once you start doing it. So again, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th, root. Okay, that's the pattern. Now the A chord and the D chord are going to follow that exact same pattern because they're really the same chord, just moved down a string. So if we took this E chord and we moved it down a string and then compensated for the G and B string difference and added a fret, that's our A major chord. You see, they're the same exact chord. And here, starting on the A string, we have root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. Same exact pattern, just moved over a string. And if you wanted to add that bottom string, that bottom E, that's also the 5th of the chord. So if we played it from the bottom, it'd be 5th, root, 5th, root, 3rd, 5th. Okay, now we're going to move that A chord over a string. Now we're going to compensate for that G and B string difference by adding a fret to the 2nd string, and you see that's a D chord. Again, it's the same chord, just moved over a string. And what we have is root, 5th, root, 3rd, just like on the other 2 chords. And again, if you wanted to add that open string, it'd be 5th, root, 5th, root, 3rd. Chord with the D chord, sometimes people like to grab the 2nd fret down on the bottom string, and that would be the third of the chord. Okay. So now you know kind of the intervallic pattern of all 5 of these chords. Really, you're only memorizing 2 patterns. You're memorizing this pattern, and then you just move it over when you go to that C. And you're memorizing this pattern, and you move it over when you go to the A, you move it over when you go to the D. Seems intimidating at first, but take your time with it. It's going to be well worth it in your playing to know these chords and how each note in the chord is functioning. Is it a root, is it a third, or is it a fifth? Next lesson is when we get into the really powerful stuff with the cage system, and you'll see how.